Hey guys, this is Warhawk Beyond 2040, and welcome to the first edition of a brand new movie review series where I'll be talking about DC animated movies, other animated movies, and even live action movies. And it is with great privilege to have, for this first edition, fellow YouTuber, the Holiday Christopher Mace. Glad to have you, Chris.
Yeah, I appreciate being on. Like I said, we did the holiday break episode 16 when we were talking about the WWE Hall of Fame. So we both are big fans of comic books and movies and the comic book universe, everything like that. So this is an interesting movie to definitely talk about. I'm ready to dive right in here and talk about this movie.
Right, let's get right into it. The movie we are going to be talking about today is Justice League Dark Apokolips War, which came out earlier this year, and I just watched it again over the weekend, and quite frankly it absolutely blew my mind the second time round just watching it. And in a strange way, I mean, did you not notice that DC kind of did like their own animated universe with these movies? Did you notice that? Because I never even realized that they did this. Did you notice it?
Well, they had a lot of them. Different ones were connected, like in the movie. This is spoiler warning, folks. So if you haven't seen the movie, you can come back and watch the review after. But it's interesting because they incorporated the Flashpoint, which was very interesting. Because if you haven't seen that movie, that was a very interesting movie where he went back and saved his mother. And when he did that, the spiral effect had happened where it was Bruce Wayne that died, not his parents. And, Martha became the Joker and Thomas became Batman. It was very interesting. It was really well done. But with this movie, I like how they incorporated the Flashpoint, how they pretty much said it was because he went back in time, this ripple effect happened. This is why everything's happening. And I thought that was very interesting how they incorporated that into the story.
One thing I didn't know, obviously going back to the Flashpoint Paradox movie, obviously we had that, but I thought that, this movie, Apokolips War, I just thought it was part of a trilogy with Justice League War and Justice League Throne of Atlantis. I had no idea that for the past, 7 years, from 2013 with Flashpoint all the way up to now, I had no idea that these films were all connected, because they never really made it clear that this was a shared animated universe. I just thought they were just a bunch of movies just thrown together, and maybe they might make little references here and there. But when you look back and watch from Justice League Flashpoint Paradox all the way to Apokolips War, you do see now that, like you say, everything's all tied together, and they do it really, really well. But they did it in such a way that you didn't even notice that all these films were connected.
No, and you wouldn't. And like I said, pretty much this is their culmination of all the story arc they've done. That's where, right, like we talked about in the past, Marvel has been more successful in the cinematic universe with their movies and their storytelling, the 11+ year build they did. Now it's the DC with their animated universe. They've had a 6 or 7 year building up to this story arc that they told, and the conclusion to the story arc, which was very interesting, really well done how they did it. Like I said, it wasn't where they didn't try to shove 3 hours worth of a movie together and expand and spread it out, because they could easily made this 2 parts if they really wanted to, but they told a great story with the hour and a half they worked with. I mean, like I said, everybody's attention spans are only like about 89, 90 minutes. So when you've got a movie and when you got a movie that tells the story from start to finish, and there's always something going on, something you got to pay attention to, you're intrigued with it from start to finish. It was really well done, and people will compare it to, like, compare it to Infinity War, Infinity Endgames from Avengers, and it's not really. It's something completely different. It's not. You have to use your imagination exactly what everything that transpired, because they only show you bits and pieces of what happened, which caused all this ripple effect to happen 2 years later.
The thing with this movie, it's like you said, this is a culmination of 6 to 7 years worth of storytelling. And in a way, this is kind of the DC animated universe's answer to Avengers Endgame. But as you say, it's completely different. And I would say Apokolips War, watching it over again over the weekend, it's a lot more darker, quite violent in some areas, and in many ways it's a lot more on a different scale than what the MCU did with Avengers Endgame. I mean, some of the aspects they done in this movie was some things that, you know, I'd been wanting to see for a long, long time. I mean, in this movie we saw Batman corrupted by Darkseid, which was something that, you know, I always wanted to see for a long time, an evil Batman. We never really seen that much in the mainstream, did we?
No, not really in the mainstream do we see it. We saw it in different adaptations of comics where he was not the good guy, but those are so far in between. So for him to get corrupted by Darkseid, how they did it was an interesting twist to it. Like I said, Superman losing his powers where they burned the kryptonite as an S into his chest. Wonder Woman being transformed into pretty much a machine, being a slave of Darkseid. It was, like I said, they did a lot of stuff which made it interesting. And, you know, you see a lot of heroes die, but you only see them in flashbacks. And Constantine was like the breakout star in this whole movie. It was pretty much, you know, he was the key component to everything. And I do like how they incorporated that, and they made you think halfway through the movie that he was a coward. Why did he run and leave the woman he loves behind? Why did he do that? Because if you read his comic books or seen the movie or seen the TV series or anything along that lines of any of the content of John Constantine, he has no F's to give. He's going to go and keep fighting. He doesn't care. He wants to die. He doesn't care.
The thing with Constantine, like you say, that he was the breakout character in this movie, but if you go back to some of those movies like Justice League Dark and even his own movie that he had, you could kind of see that they were gearing up for Constantine to have a much bigger role in a big event. You didn't know what it was going to be, but if you go back and watch a couple of those movies within this universe, and then you watch Apokolips War, then you look back and think, oh, you're right. Now we see what they were preparing him for. So they weren't just trying to make him the big guy for nothing. They were preparing him for a much bigger role. And I thought it was really good that, you know, they brought Matt Ryan in to do the voice of Constantine, because to me, and I'm sure you agree with this as well, Matt Ryan is Constantine. There's no one else I could see play that character or be the voice of that character but him. I mean, sure, there's other good guys, but he is Constantine to me, and it just made perfect sense having him be the voice in such a big film like this.
Yeah, it did. It made complete sense to do it that way. Like I said, if people who have only know who Constantine is based on the movie with Keanu Reeves, they never saw the series. The series didn't last long, but the series was really well done. And like I said, getting the same actor to do the voice of John Constantine in these movies, I thought was a really good idea. It was a good touch to pay homage to the character, because like I said, he's like more like the anti-hero. He's not really a good guy. He's not really a bad guy. He's just there. He just handles each situation at a time. I do like how they incorporated Raven into it as well.
Yeah, she had
I do like how they did it. They did it similar to how they did Avengers. You know, they had Captain Marvel, and everybody was worried, how they're going to make it where Captain Marvel doesn't just save the day. Because everybody got to remember, Raven is a very strong and deep character, and I do like how, you know, they made it where she wasn't the one who could just go back and fix everything. They didn't make her to be the super badass that fixes everything. You see her struggle, you know, trying to keep her father at bay and everything like that. Her healing power's not working. You see all this different stuff she struggles, going to, and that played a key role towards the end. But I mean, at the same time too, it is interesting. You still see a bunch of heroes die, even at the end. You see a lot of people die, and you see a lot of villains team up. The Suicide Squad. That was interesting. How well done that was. And it had its little bits of comedy with Constantine going, "Oh, there's my ex-girlfriend," and they look, and Raven goes, "Look, oh, what, right there, Harley Quinn? No." And you see Shark, and you see Shark. It was funny. I'm a shark.
Yeah.
I'm a shark.
Yeah.
I am a shark. And but I mean, but also little nuggets too, like they show where Damian tried to use the Lazarus pit to save Nightwing and everything like that, and how it backfired. You didn't really see that too much. Everybody knows the Lazarus pit, what Ra's al Ghul used, be able to make himself younger and keep himself alive and everything like that. And and Batman had used it before, but it was different to see that it didn't work as he thought it was going to. He tried it, and it made Nightwing go crazy. He was trying to save his brother, and it didn't work that way. I mean, I do like the little things. I liked how some characters you don't see much of, like Swamp Thing, how Constantine was able to use Swamp Thing to help them try to destroy one of the three machines that need to be destroyed to stop melting the Earth's core. I do like how you use certain characters you don't see much of in small roles, but they played such a trivial part in the movie, like what Swamp Thing did. And and Batman, like I said, I like how they did Batman. He's always smart. He always had a contingency plan. And then when you find out what happened to Constantine, why he ran away, and it was all part of a plan by Batman to have a contingency plan, Constantine's pissed about that, but he understands what he did now because he knew Constantine was going to play a bigger role in the movie.
Definitely. Also, I like what you said also, that even though you try to save everyone in this movie, there's going to be casualties, like towards the end of the movie where you see Damian Wayne sacrifice himself to save Batman, and you see him get absolutely fried by Darkseid's Omega beams. And when I first saw that, it really caught me off guard because over the course of the movie, you see lots of people dying, but I didn't really expect Robin to get burned the way he did. I knew he would get injured, but I thought there's no way they're going to kill off Robin. Not like that. Not after just getting Batman back to normal and free from Darkseid's corruption. But that shot where he gets blasted by the Omega beams and you see him just laying there not in a pile of ash, but he's just completely charred. I just thought, wow, this is pretty dark for an animated movie. This is something you would have seen in like a Japanese anime movie. Some of the things they did in this movie, they really pulled out all the stops for this film. And as you watch it, you can really see that this is the final film of this universe, and they didn't hold nothing back. They just really didn't hold anything back. They just threw out everything, including the kitchen sink for this one. And it, as you say, it really paid off in a really big way.
And I think what they did differently is that they didn't undo a lot of these people's deaths. Like a lot of them died. They didn't undo what they did.
No.
And that's the thing. It's hard enough when you have a movie where it was, like I said, I like to reference it because it makes sense. A lot of people I've heard compared it to like, oh, this is like Avengers, Infinity War, Endgames, and it's not, because there was no gauntlet, there was no snap that they undid everything, and they had to go through this for 2 years. It was 2 years they went through, and like I said, you have Superman who's actually now just a normal man because he was burned with that kryptonite inside of him as a shape of an S to remind him of your failure. And I do like the little nuggets. Like I said, I do like the storytelling, how, Darkseid used the mother box that Cyborg was using to hear what the plan was, what they did, how they turned the parademons into half Doomsday, half parademons. You had an interesting story. You saw a lot of heroes die. A lot of them didn't even stand a chance. Like I said, the Green Lantern Corps was completely destroyed, whether Hal died at the beginning or... they were all pretty much destroyed by Darkseid. They had no chance against him. And I I find it interesting, and I like the shocking moment where they release Flash. They think Flash is dead, and they release Flash who's powering the generator. And I like how their whole goal is they got to destroy the generator so Darkseid can't come back. Well, Flash is running the generator, so you can't destroy it because if you do, you kill Flash. And just Constantine finding out that he caused all this. He's the one who did this. His Flashpoint that you've seen in the Flashpoint movie, he had the ripple effect, and that's what people understand. When he does the Flashpoint, it does cause that ripple effect. It causes other things, whether it's going to be good or bad. There's other events that happen that is may not turn out the right way if he had just left time alone. And that's where the interesting concept of comes in. They reference it. I know in the comics they reference it for like the butterfly effect. You change one thing, you're going to ripple and you're going to change everything.
Definitely. There was, I don't know if you noticed, but there's that scene where Flash is running on that treadmill that's powering the generator. Did you think in some way that was kind of like a reference to Crisis on Infinite Earths? It was kind of similar, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's kind of similar. Yeah, I think it was a nod to that as well. But like I said, I think the ending, how they did everything, Lois Lane, she didn't make it. She sacrificed herself. The Suicide Squad played a big role of trying to get in there. And no Lex Luthor, he always plays both sides of the movie. He's always like, okay, who's he benefiting from? You don't know what side he's ever on, because he's always plotting. He's a mastermind. He plots in his head, but he's always going to be on whatever side benefits him.
Absolutely. I liked that with Lex Luthor, he's trying to play off Batman and Darkseid, but they see right through him, knowing that no, Lex, this ain't going to work this time. This is not going to work. You can't just use us to your advantage. This is a different person you're playing with, because Darkseid's not really the guy to really mess with. No matter how smart Lex Luthor is, Darkseid's always that little step above him. And the way they built Darkseid up in this movie, it was almost like Thanos on steroids, but bigger. Darkseid didn't talk a lot in this film, because I remember Darkseid from the DCAU and the comic books. Darkseid's quite a vocal god, but in this film, I like what they did. They didn't have Darkseid say too much, which is good. He just sits there on his throne and thinking and brooding, and I thought that really worked out better for such a big villain like him, because I wouldn't really want to see Darkseid beating the crap out of Superman and he's just constantly talking, because it doesn't really make him that much threatening. So by having him not speak as much worked really well for the story overall. What would you say?
I think they did a good job with the Darkseid character in this movie. Like I said, they let him be the silent villain that he only speaks, but when he does speak, his words mean something when he speaks. He didn't speak much. Batman did a lot of the talking when he was corrupted.
That's right.
And it was interesting. Like I said, the whole movie itself, it's 91 minutes, but it's really worth the watch. What happens, the culmination, everything. Constantine playing a big role. Like I said, everything made sense. Everybody who played the small parts, like I said, like Swamp Thing, he was not in there much, but you don't see him too much. But his role meant a lot to telling the story. And when and it's like some of the heroes that did survive, like Shazam at the beginning, like I said, it was interesting. You could see when he had to go for another battle with them, you could see where he was injured. Like I said, he didn't have a leg anymore. He was using his energy to form a leg. You saw little things like that. You saw how quickly they killed Superboy. Like I said, you had a lot of people that died in this movie, and the way they did it, like I said, you normally see the heroes win, but there's a lot of times the heroes don't always win. This is a big instance where, yes, at the end they were able to stop Darkseid. However, look at the damage that was done. The damage was done already. By the time it was all said and done, the damage is done. and the sacrifice they had to do with Constantine having to go up there and tell Flash, you're going to have to do it again. I promised I wouldn't. Well, you're going to have to. We may make mistakes again, but something's got to be better than what we have, because at the end, they already said that the Earth was pretty much messed up, and at the end of the day, it was going to kill another billions of people. Just because and I liked how they did Superman getting his powers back too. You know, Raven's father having, you know, John Constantine, because in the movie you have him and Raven make that deal that she wants Constantine to kill her if she can't keep control with the dagger and put her in his book. Well, like I said, he knocks the stone off her head and enables her father to be released, but then he goes into Superman instead and then kills Constantine for Constantine to come back to life a few minutes later. It's like,
yeah,
because his job wasn't done yet, but that's when you get the revelation. You put a spell on me. You made me run. You put a spell on me to make me run, because the whole movie, that was everybody's wonder. Why did you run? Why did you leave? And everybody who knows the Constantine character knows that's not like him to run. Something must have happened for him just to run. And then when that big revelation came, it's like, now it makes sense why you ran.
Well, it did catch me a bit off guard, you know, seeing Constantine leaving Zatanna the way he did. You know, when I first watched it the first time round and seeing that, I thought, what's he doing? You know, why are you leaving her? You know, that's his partner, that's his girlfriend. Why would you do that? But then later on, like you said, you learn, that's why he left her. He didn't do it because he was a coward. He did it because it was all part of the bigger plan, the bigger role for Constantine. One other moment, which doesn't really get talked about in this movie much, I'm quite surprised this didn't get brought up in conversations that I've seen, is the way Jon Stewart died. It was really brutal the way he died. Like, you see him, he's like half of his body's all cut off and he's just like crawling on his hands and he's reciting the iconic Green Lantern line, in brightest day and blackest night, while he's trying to get the ring, and Darkseid just fries what's left of him, and all that's left is just a pile of ash and bones. That really was such a dark moment, probably the darkest death in the entire movie. That's not really one that got talked about a lot. I mean, what was your reaction to Jon Stewart's death in this movie?
It was interesting how they did it, because it was like Darkseid was talking to Batman, and he's saying, Batman's interrupting. He's like, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we have an issue. You need to return. And he's like going, oh, by the way, send a molten core to this location. And then when he's about to do it and try to get help, all of a sudden you see him be burned to death. And it was just one of those scenes where you just see, all you see is the skeleton, and then he's ashes, and then a ring. It reminds you of seeing something like Terminator 2 Judgment Day, for example, how they showed that horrific scene. But there's a lot of things. And one thing that doesn't get they don't really reference Aquaman too much in this movie. And that's another thing, too, that was kind of people were talking about. They didn't really have Aquaman too much in this movie, or seeing anybody from Atlantis or anybody anybody from Wonder Woman's planet come in to help or anything like that. And that was something I saw a lot of people talk about. They didn't add them into the movie. What were your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, Aquaman died at the beginning of the movie, as we saw in the quick flashback. But, you know, Mira got corrupted and was turned into, you know, like a machine. I thought they would have done the same for Aquaman, because, you know, Aquaman, whether anyone agrees with it or not, Aquaman is an important part of the DC universe, and I actually would have thought he would have had some sort of big role in such a massive event, but he was never seen or spoken of again. And even when the heroes eventually did win, as you say, at a heavy cost, you know, there was no mention of Arthur Curry. Like, they never said oh, it's a shame Arthur Curry didn't make it. You know, they never really talked about him much. So yeah, that bothered me a little bit, because it would have been nice if they at least referenced him at least once. But they didn't really. And they didn't really reference another character as well, John Jones. They didn't really mention John Jones that much. I mean, he was there. We saw him at the beginning, and we saw him die. But no, they didn't really mention. They didn't really mention him. There was a few heroes I noticed that didn't really get referenced much.
And that's, I think, the only critique of the movie would be that they didn't reference a few heroes here and there. I mean, Aquaman was like the noticeable one to me. It was on that, like I said. And, you know, I do like how they were able to, how they didn't make it where it was so easy to break the codes off the, when they rebuilt Wonder Woman and all them, that they didn't just make it easy for them to be uncorrupted, that, you know, Constantine had to be smart and use her lasso to, you know, make her tell the truth and make her. And that's where I thought that was a key point there, because once you got Wonder Woman back, you had more of a fair chance of trying to get through to there and figure out everything. But all in all, like I said, this is a movie where I would definitely say, if you want to tell a story, conclude a story, this is the way to conclude a story. Yes, people might criticize, well, they just used the flashpoint at the end and just going to undo everything. You have to remember the rule of the flashpoint, though, because you change one thing in time does not mean that you're going to fix everything. Like Constantine said, we're going to make mistakes along the way, and that's why that quote at the beginning was very important to remember. You can't change. You can only change certain things that were in your control, and that's why that quote at the beginning is very important to remember when you watch this movie. Because the ending, he says, "We're going to still screw up. We're going to make mistakes." But it's got to be better than what we got now, because if he hadn't done the flashpoint, the world was going to die, and they're all going to die anyways.
Yeah, I mean, that was quite a good way to end the Apokolips War, having Flash run back in time and reboot the whole universe again. Like you said, that we are going to make mistakes, you know, but it's got to be 1,000 times better than what's going on right now. And another thing that I wanted to mention in this movie, the way we talked about this earlier, just the way they incorporated and tied about 6 to 7 years worth of storytelling, culminating with this movie. I mean, this shows, to me anyway, you'll probably agree as well, this shows that, all due respect to the MCU, when it comes to animation, I've always said this, DC do it as good, if not better, than anybody else. This is definitely probably the strongest DC animated movie that they've released to date, and without a doubt, for me, probably the best film of 2020. I mean, this was really, really good. I mean, if this was going to be the final thing DC ever did in their whole life, then this was be the perfect way to go out. I mean, this was absolutely superb. And Rotten Tomatoes reviewed this movie, and not since Under the Red Hood from 2010, they gave this movie 100% rating. And that's insane. Last time a DC animated movie got 100% was Under the Red Hood. So that tells you that DC can do something right, and they always do it right with the animated movies. What do you say to that?
I would say they did this movie right. Like I said, there's a lot of great DC. The DC, like I said, the animated side, they've always done a good job and an awesome job with how they're storytelling, because I don't think they're restricted as much. When it's animated, you're not as restricted as much as you are when you're trying to make a live action movie, trying to get ratings and stuff like that. And they didn't do this. And I think what helped them is they didn't have to do a theater release of these movies.
No.
And so when you don't have to do that, you don't have the restrictions. You're just running it through your company that it's under, the banner that it's under, and you're just running it that way. And you can make it however you want. You don't have to go through these people that do the rating systems, and they have to watch it and go, oh, yeah, I'm going to rate it this because, or you need to change this if you want a PG-13 rating. And I think the more mature audience would like this. Like I said, a lot of people as adults are not really into animated movies as much.
No.
However, if you watch this show, And if you want any references, like I said, this is one of those movies you don't have to watch every single movie to understand.
No.
The only movie I would recommend if you want to have some idea what I'm talking about would be the Flash, the Flashpoint, where he went back and saved his mother. And then you understand what I'm talking about with the butterfly effect, how you change one thing, you change everything, because you see how it plays out there. And I was really interested. They didn't have any reference to Reverse Flash, because people got to remember too, Reverse Flash played a big role in that stuff as well. And then you even saw him in the Suicide Squad movie where he remembers everything, and he still was shot in the head by Thomas Wayne, and he still was using all his ability to keep himself alive by vibrating his head to keep it from the bullet going through and stuff like that. So there's a lot of references to, you see a brief moment where Constantine's looking at the Flash's head, Barry's head, and he sees all this stuff. He said, "You caused this. You did this. You caused all this." Definitely. And you see how important it is what he did, the damage. You don't see the effects right away, but now you've seen the effects of what happened when he did the Flashpoint. When he tried to fix it, you did another ripple in time and did another ripple effect.
Also, another movie I would highly recommend, if anyone who didn't catch the reference that Superman made at the beginning of the movie about Darkseid had attacked Earth before, you also need to watch Justice League War, because that's where not only the Justice League was formed, but that was the first attack that Darkseid attempted on planet Earth. So really the two films everybody needs to watch if you don't really have a clue about what's everything's going on here is Flashpoint's Paradox and Justice League War. So those are the two films you really need to see to get roughly the bigger picture of everything that's going on. Like you said, you don't necessarily have to watch all of these movies to know what's going on. I would say like you would need to at least watch at least two movies, and you'll get pretty much everything you need to know in those two movies, especially like you said with the Flashpoint Paradox.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like the MCU where you had to watch 11 years worth of movies, 22 movies to understand the whole picture, the whole story, because they kept planting the seeds for what was going to come. And that's the thing is, you understood. See, this is the rumor they were talking about where they did this Justice League War, and in this movie where they talking about this is what they were going to plan for Justice League 2 and Justice League 3 if they had made those movies. And would they have been successful doing those in the movie theaters and having a worldwide release with that? I don't know, because we see the criticism of the Justice League movie, and you see the criticism of other movies.
Well, it's very hard to say really, because like you said earlier, when you when you have animation, it's a little bit different. It's a little bit different in terms of the set of rules you have to follow, because like you said earlier, with animation you're not as restricted. You can do anything you want with animation. You can be as over the top with it, and no one's going to really say to you, oh, you can't do that, that's too much, or that might need to be toned down a little bit. You're not as handcuffed to how you want your movie to be in animation as opposed to live action, because if you try to attempt something like this with live action, you and I both know that this will get toned right down, because censorships, your audience, some members of the audience could be a little bit younger and may not be suitable for them to watch. But with animation, obviously, depending on what certificates you give it, I would say with animation, anyone can watch it at any age and, be enthralled and enjoy it for what it is. With live action, would it have been as successful if they'd gone down this route? I believe if they had taken their time, like they did with the MCU, built it up over the course of maybe 5 to 6 movies, maybe they could have done. But had they gone the routes that they were going on, probably not. But as you say, it's very hard to tell how things would have played out. But definitely with this movie, they did a fantastic job, and it delivered in a big way, and hands down for me, unless something else comes out at the end of the year, this is definitely my movie of 2020. This was fantastic, and rightly so. You know, it was really good.
Yeah, I have to agree. I think this is a way to culminate a movie series. Way you did it. You don't have to always have the happy ending to a movie to tell a great story. And this movie, from start to finish, told an amazing story. Continued with what their continuity has been. And I know some people's complaint was, oh well, they just end up at the end. They just end up rebooting everything. You have to remember the flashpoint. It's that just because he went back, you don't know what's going to happen next in their universe. It could be, like I said, you see Constantine. I believe the only two people who are going to actually remember everything would be the Flash, because Barry remembered everything when the Flashpoint. He remembered everything from both parts of his life, with his mother being alive and his mother not being alive. He remembered all that stuff. And I think Constantine, with his abilities, he'll be able to remember everything that happened. So you would hope they would play up that storyline where they both wouldn't allow that something like that to happen again. Or if they ever go into a movie where like they do this again or something, they say, well, we must go do this. And then Barry could say, no, we've been down this road before. I remember we've been down this road before. It didn't turn out good. We got to try another way. And I think they're going to have the continuity into it still. They're going to reference a lot of stuff that happened here. And that's the definition of good storytelling, is that you're able to recall and reference things that have already happened to be able to continue to tell a different story.
Well, I mean, we've got a new DC animated movie coming out, I think either in August or maybe October or November. That's Superman, Man of Tomorrow. And the animation style is very different. So it looks like to me, I mean, we'll have to see when that comes out, but it looks like to me that the start of the new DC animated movie universe has officially kicked off. So we're just going to have to wait and see whether or not the events of Apokolips War will be referenced in the next new line of movies or not. So we'll just have to sit and wait and see how things are going to play out. But yeah, this was certainly the best DC animated movie I've seen. I would definitely put this up there with like Under the Red Hood and, you know, Superman Doomsday, you know, those early DC animated movies in terms of like storytelling and such an epic scale. This was definitely, you know, the best one of that series of movies.
Yeah, because you've seen a lot of them. They've done, like I said, they did the Superman, the Doomsday story. They've done a lot of these stories. But like I said, the important thing is, like I said, this is 91 minutes where from start to finish you watch this movie, because some people I know watched it, bought the DVD of it. Some people watched it on the DC app that's available. I actually rented it on YouTube because I had seen clips of it and was like, this looks really interesting. I actually rented it and paid the $5.99 to rent the movie just to see it and watch it. And like I said, you were captivated from start to finish. There was no standstill. There was no slowing down point. It was, you were going, there was constantly pieces moving. Something was going on, something that needed to be addressed. And that's where I think they did the best job at. They didn't have that slow down point where you could really just take a breath, because you had to pay attention to what exactly was going on, so you could continue to know what they're doing, what they're trying to do, how they're going to accomplish this. Like, you felt that a lot of hope is lost. What are they trying to do? How are they going to do this? And like I said, incorporating the Suicide Squad, incorporating the characters they did use in small doses in timely fashions, I think they did a really good job with that. Like I said, to me, this movie, like I said, I would give it an A-minus. And my only criticism would be, like I said, they didn't really reference Aquaman just at the beginning. And then there are certain characters they didn't really reference barely, or if they did, it was just in very small sequences where we see him die in like less than a minute. And so, I mean, other than that, but like I said, like I said, that's my only criticism. They didn't really reference Aquaman too much. I said that's not really bad, because they did continue the story and they played the story out well. And we got to realize that not every hero made it in this movie. A lot of heroes did die in this movie, even before he did the Flashpoint to fix it. A lot of people died. A lot of people are machines or half machines or whatever at this point. Like I said, a lot of people were hurt. A lot of people died.
Definitely. Another thing in this movie, which I thought was half funny, but at the same time quite cool, was the way they killed off Etrigan, the demon, because you see Etrigan at the beginning after everything that's happened. You see him with Constantine. He's just laying there, literally crying in his own beer. But then you just think, how can you take this demon seriously? Because all he does is drink, burp, and let off not gas but flames. So then you see him at the end. He literally just goes to hell, but he goes out like a real boss, and he just says, well, it's been fun, and he just dies. And I thought that was a really good way they did that with him, because all throughout the movie he's just kind of like this big dopey buffoon, and he sees Damian Wayne and says, I like him, and that sort of thing, and he's just laying there drinking. So the way they wrapped up his story towards the end, I thought that was very well done, and that's quite an underrated moment. It's another one didn't really get much.
That is another one too, but at least it told the story. You could tell that it wasn't like they made it where everybody was affected. They didn't leave him out. They didn't make it where he was like on, oh well, shit happens, let's go, let's just keep fighting. You could see how everything affected everybody in the movie. Like I said, Constantine and Superman took it a lot the worst, because of the fact that Superman's now has no power, but yet he's still fighting as just a man. And Constantine's trying to figure out that, why did I run? The whole mystery. Why did I run? Why did I run? Why did I run? And Raven criticizing for him, like going, Clark still fights without powers. You just ran like a coward.
One of the cool concepts of this movie, and this was something I think I thought about a few years ago, I thought to myself, wouldn't it be cool if the parademons fused with Doomsday? And they actually did it. I thought that was a really cool thing. They fused the Doomsday creature with Darkseid's parademons and made them into essentially a fusion of paradooms. And I thought that was a very interesting but cool concept to pull off. And it looked really cool, because if you pitched that to someone, they would have said, well, how's that going to work? Doomsday fused with a parademon. But when you actually see it, you think, it doesn't look too bad, actually.
No, it didn't look too bad, and I like it because Batman's talking about, well, here are the Paradoom's weaknesses. Okay, well, in any battle, if you lose, like Darkseid lost at War, I said you got to adjust. Now he said he has the mother box, so he's able to see what they're planning. He was able to adjust. Like, okay, well, yeah, I see their weaknesses, so let me do something different here where you're not expecting this. And that's where. It's just one of those, it's just one of those things where it's like certain characters, like I've always been a fan of Shazam, just like I said, he didn't really play too much of a role in there till the end. Like I said, he was hurt at the beginning. He was able to escape thanks to Cyborg, and then, he was getting beat down and he was about to die, and then he just yelled Shazam to be able to blow up all the Paradooms. I thought was well done how he did that, because he just had to sacrifice himself because he knew he wasn't strong enough to defeat him. And like I said, there's just a lot of stuff that happened. There's a lot of small things I know we're leaving out, but we could sit here probably all day and discuss this movie. But like I said, they made it realistic. Like this is probably more of the realistic movie when they took all these characters, put them together. You realize that, yes, Raven is strong enough. She could have probably solved this all, let her father out, but she's fighting with him not to release Trigon. She don't want to let him out. But people underestimate Trigon played a big role in this movie towards the end, taking over Superman, fighting Darkseid as Superman. Superman finally getting his power, because it was Trigon that burned that kryptonite out of him. That's right. When Superman heard Lois Lane's voice, she goes, look, we're not going to make it. We got to blow this up. I'm not going to make it. I love you. Then he becomes Superman again. It was Trigon that was the one who burned that kryptonite out of him to give him his powers back. And then you saw that battle with him and Darkseid, but then Constantine and Raven, what they did, they released Trigon, so you had the old god versus the new god, and that was an interesting battle. I would love to see more of them battle, but how they did it, Cyborg couldn't leave, so he made sure he sent them all somewhere where they send them to nowhere. And, Trigon, who didn't mind it, because Trigon told his daughter, "This is the greatest gift you ever gave me. Thank you, daughter." Because he was happy. He was not enchained. He was fighting somebody who claims to be this new god, and he's the old god going, "No, you're not. You're not taking over my spot."
Yeah, that was quite a good fight scene. I mean, as much as I enjoyed Superman and Darkseid going at it, Trigon and Darkseid fight was probably a little bit better because, as you said, you've essentially just got two gods, a new god and the old god, just fighting each other with time hanging in the balance. So that was a really good way to have the movie close out, just them two just destroying each other. That was a very good way to end it, I think.
And Trigon looking at Superman going, "You go, or you can fight me to have the right to fight him." And people don't realize, like I said, Raven, and another thing that was a touching moment was Raven, saving Damian, getting him healed. And she said, "I had to try," because during this movie, you see this little connection they both have, Damian and Raven, the connection they have, that the love they have for each other. You see little bits and tidbits. You see a little bit tips of hope in this movie. It's not like it's completely dark. There's no hope or anything. You see little bits of hope in the movie that make you go, okay, they got something planned. They got something planned. They got something planned. But I think it was really well done how they had Constantine be the key person in this movie was Constantine in this movie. And I thought the way they did it with him, all the storytelling they did, I think was really well done. At the end of the day, this is by far one of the best DC animated movies they've done. Like I said, my only critique is the Aquaman thing, but that's being petty, and that's me reaching for something at this point, because I thought from start to finish for 91 minutes, this was a really good movie, and that was the only way I think the movie could have ended, how they had to do it. They're still defeated, but they had to go back and reset everything again. And people might critique that ending, but however, don't critique it. My opinion is don't critique it until you see later down the road what they do, because I feel like they're going to revisit the storyline again in the future, because Barry's going to remember it, and Constantine's going to remember what happened. And I think it's going to play a factor in the later movies.
Well, we'll just have to wait and see how things play out. But yeah, it's been really good going over this movie and talking about lots of the high points. Not many low points, but I have to agree that the only low points, if you'd want to call it that, was obviously not referencing Aquaman. But by and large, this was a tremendous movie and certainly one of DC's strongest to date. So it's going to be very interesting how they're going to top this one. But DC always seem to find a way, especially in the animated circles, they always find a way to outdo themselves with these animated properties. So we're just going to have to wait and see, really. So everyone, we're going to wrap this up now. Hope you enjoyed listening to us talking about Justice League Dark, Apokolips War. If there's any favourite moments you have, you know what to do. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and leave your thoughts and comments down below. And also, I highly recommend you check out the Holiday Christopher Mace. He has lots of cool wrestling videos about AEW and NWA and, of course, the WWE. So I highly recommend you check out his channel. He has a lot of cool stuff. And thanks for being on here today, Chris. And it's been really good talking about this tremendous movie, and look forward to talking about more of these movies in the near future.
Yeah, like I said, it's always our time difference, because I'm in the U.S., you're in the U.K., so I said our time difference never really meshes well, so it actually worked out today, since we've been trying to plan this for like a week now to try to get this going. So But like I said, we got it going. Like I said, it was great. Like I said, at the end of the day, this is definitely a movie I would recommend checking out. 91 minutes, it's definitely worth your time. You won't even feel like you've been watching it 91 minutes when it's all said and done. You won't even feel like the time's gone by at all.
And also, anyone who enjoys DC animated movies, I highly recommend watching all of them. They're all good. I wouldn't like to say there's a bad one. They're all very good in their own rights, but the ones I highly recommend is this one, Flashpoint's Paradox, and Justice League War. They're the three standouts for me. But go ahead and watch all of them. So, with that all said, take care, everybody, and stay safe, and bye for now.
Have a good one, y'all.
You too.